Believe it or not, no HR person likes to restructure. No HR person likes to make people redundant. I hold my hand on my heart. Every restructure I've ever done, I've always done with care and respect for the people who were impacted. I even believed that what we were doing in the organization was the right thing. So I would say, as an HR professional, I'm incredibly proud of everything I've achieved. The issue that I'm not proud of is it came at a personal cost. It came at a personal cost to me. It came at the cost of burning out.
Hello everyone and welcome to the new Twistcast episode. My name is Peter and today, as every other episode, we will go raw and unpolished. Today's conversation is about what it actually takes to stay steady, but not in theory. We are not going to talk about theoretical parts. We are going to talk about real systems. My guest today has spent years inside leadership room, HR structures, and board conversations, and just enough to notice what these systems quietly demand from people. She works closely with leaders, writes about courage and steadiness, and is currently working on her upcoming masterpiece book called Encord, which we will definitely hear more from her in this episode. So today, we don't talk about fixed organizations, but about what it costs to stay in them without losing yourself. Welcome to Twistcast, Rochelle. So happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Peter. I'm excited to have this conversation, especially the point about what does it cost us to stay in these systems? Of course, we all want to have a successful life, but success comes at a price. It's never for free.
Absolutely. Nothing is for free nowadays, I would say, especially the cost of staying in companies in today's fast-paced environment. So, Rochelle, you have been around leadership systems for a long time. I'm really curious here to hear from you, and let's crack on with the conversation this way. So, was there a belief about leadership that you carried for years and that one quietly stopped working at some point?
Yeah, I would say it's probably quite simple. Everybody goes into a job wanting to succeed. And of course, everyone, when you go into a job, you want to get to the best position. One of the beliefs that I probably hung on to is that if you work hard enough and you deliver what you're being asked to do, your success should be seen. Now, that belief is clearly not true, because the higher you climb, it's not just about the success. It's not just about the delivery. It's not just about what you do. You also have to operate in an environment where you are set. I wouldn't say you're not set up for failure, but it's set up in such a way that it conflicts with what human beings are set up with. And so when I talk about systems in the corporate world, they clearly set up for profit. They're clearly set up for success, for growth, for pace, for efficiency, for speed. But if you look at a human being, what are we set up for? We set up for love, belonging, companion. We want to be nurtured. So those are two competing things. What I realized in the end is that in order for you to succeed in two competing systems, one of it comes at a cost.
Definitely, Rochelle. You combine the cost of that with the emotional part of life.
I mean, it's emotional, but also the cost of your health, the cost of your energy. I was fairly successful. I climbed to the top of the organization. But was my family getting all of me? Was my health getting all of me? Were my children getting all of me? It just so much came at a cost. And so the cost is emotional, it's human, it's how I engaged with the world, how I spoke up. It's a lot more than just the emotional side. It's everything.
So how was the feeling at that moment when you realized that actually this costed you? Did it make you angry or did it make you quieter? How did you choose the path to move on after that?
I think the moment was a simple moment. It was a moment of I remember getting ready for work one morning and I looked in the mirror and I saw myself, obviously, and I was wearing this black suit. I think I had it, I can't remember what color shirt on, but I looked at myself and I'm like, who am I? I literally asked myself, who am I? And I looked and I thought, I'm 30 kilograms heavier than what I was when I left my home country in South Africa in 2002. So there's a visible shape difference. I'm wearing dark clothes, nothing bright. And that's the reason why I started wearing dark clothes is I was trying to hide my size. I'm now back 30 kilos lighter. I'm back to what I was. But I looked at myself and I was like, I don't look like myself, but I have a fat bank balance. I have houses in multiple countries. I have two amazing kids going to international school. I'm married to my husband that I actually prefer to avoid. What am I doing? Who am I? And what is this life that I have? Because I have everything, what people would deem as visible markers of success. But yet inside, I looked at myself and I hated the person I was seeing. So that was the moment where I was like, something's not right. It, this cannot be success. This cannot be what I was pushing for.
And that was the main trigger that actually made you do something differently at that point.
Because when you ask yourself the question, who am I? You're really asking yourself a question that is not at a superficial level.
The cost was very high, I would say. And for sure, there are so many individuals in this world who don't yet realize that they reached that point. As we go into that monotony of successful life and chase success blindfolded without even thinking about what the success actually means. You connected two sides of yourself, professional and personal. And thanks a lot for speaking honestly about this. This is strongly valuable. I noticed that you talk a lot of, especially on LinkedIn, where you express yourself so openly. There you talk about the world is not designed for humans, right? So is this actually the point that we discuss about? Did this, your personal experience, actually led to constantly, or let's say frequently, stress out that point that we live in the world chasing success, but the world that weren't designed for humans?
Yeah. Well, if you connect those two things, we see what's visible. So most people will go, in order for you to be successful, you need to be promoted, which means we set people up to compete in those systems. So everybody who comes into the workforce, I'm in HR, I know this well. We have these things called 9-box grids, talent matrices, where we put people in boxes and we say, this is the best talent, that's upcoming, that's sustained high performer, that's a good, solid citizen. So we label people in these systems in the world of work. Not because we don't like people, but ultimately, if people think the marker of success is to be promoted, and the organization has these blocks where we are mapping people, we are labeling people. And so when we chase success, we chase it simply to be promoted. So what happens? People compete against each other. There's unhelpful behavior. Our focus, we become automatic. We just focus, focus, focus. We focus on performance. We focus on delivery. We focus on pushing each other out of the way so that we can be seen. Now, why do we do that? We do that because unfortunately the system is designed for that. But there's another design factor in life. If you think about it, when you're born as a kid, you come into this world, all you're interested in is safety and love. And you get that from your parent. Okay? That's the first thing you're interested in as a child. And you're curious. Nothing stops you. But you go to school. What happens in school? You get put in neat rows. You get told you need to conform. So you learn to conform at school. Not in a bad way, but the bottom line is school is designed to teach you, but you learn conformity. So what do you learn? As a teen, by the time you become a teenager, you want to fit in with your friend group. So you start to see the world as I need to fit in to belong. So what happens is you start erasing little parts of yourself. Now imagine, I want to go back to the 9-box grid. You're now back in the organization that determines how people get promoted. The top talent goes on the best leadership development programs. Other people don't get everything that supports them, but you all want to get to the top. So it becomes a constant tension. I'm saying you need to understand that that's the way we've been shaped through the world. So soon enough, I got to the point of I lost my identity. I lost my sense of purpose. I lost my sense of what does it mean? What does success mean to me? I was so busy focusing on the external markers, I was not looking at myself. In hindsight, the only person that needed to change was me. If you have trauma in your background, if you've grown up in a war zone, if you've grown up in poverty, you come with hiccups, you come with things back. But when you're in a corporate world, in the environment that I operated in, where it's pretty successful, I was a minority. I came with trauma. Growing up in apartheid, I came up with issues. But in all of this, I was so busy focusing on success, I wasn't looking at how I showed up in that world. Therefore, it was a cost.
We do follow a system, as you say, as you just mentioned, starting from the young age in schools, even where school teaches us about conformity. Also, the life ritual that, depending on where we are coming from, and we know so many things can happen in the world, and we can come from any country that's affected by any part that can cause a life struggle. This too, I could also relate from my early life when it wasn't easy. School teaches you to fight for yourself. Your ego grows as well. Many people consider that ego as an arrogance. So you want to say, or you're claiming that that ego that we developed in early childhood, that it teaches us to follow that system, was something that we were trained into purposefully, or something that actually also depends from person to person and environment when they were raised?
I think it's different for each person. I can speak about myself. For myself, I was one of 10 children, and I was the baby. Okay, so I grew up in a family where, because my mother had so many kids, there was zero nurturing. There was zero love and affection. So what does that mean for me as a leader? It means as a leader, from the time I came into this world, I learned how to be independent. I learned how to fight to be heard, to be seen. So all those things shape your identity. As a leader, I was so focused on performance, emotion meant nothing to me. Not that it meant nothing, but because in order to survive, you've got to push, push, push. You don't really pay attention to those emotional cues. So as a leader, I was focused on delivery, 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 success, success, success. I had to think how to consider somebody else's needs. It didn't come naturally to me. So if we all come with a very different background, how does one expect people in the corporate world to communicate in a way that is respectful and accepting of each other's differences? Now, I was not a bad leader, so don't get me wrong. I was pretty good, but it was all in my head. The point I'm trying to make is your head can only get you so far as a leader until you disconnect it.
You said that you were a good leader despite what was in your mind. Was that your reflection, or you pushed yourself to be a good leader?
Well, I had the privilege of having many coaches. I attended the best leadership development programs because I was a great performer. I delivered for the system. But delivery is not it. Delivery is not the only thing in the world, because human beings don't only want to focus on delivery. So when we are in organizations, we have to accept the organization for what it is. The organization is there to make profit. It doesn't mean we have to agree with it. But what it does mean is we need to learn to look at each other with compassion. We need to learn to engage with people as human beings in that system.
I completely agree and understand you on this point, Rochelle. And it's really something that, especially nowadays, lately, let's say in the past few years, what I can see, for example, in the country where I live and work, the system that you just explained is drastically moving, especially after, let's say, the pandemic that happened in 2020. So when many things started moving and changing, and then the implementation and evolution of the artificial intelligence, that emotional intelligence is moving downwards even more and more. So I'm not sure what's the situation in Europe, for example, where you work at the moment, but I believe it's quite the same, or isn't
Yeah.
it?
I mean, it is going downwards, but let's also be compassionate. The world, the chaos and the speed at which the world is changing adds pressure on human beings. So the world that's going on and that is so chaotic and different forces people to be almost, I wouldn't say inhumane, but to be more focused on delivery, to be more focused on doing things at all costs and not worrying about other people. So it becomes competitive, but the pressure is higher. And so my biggest lesson, if I had to give anybody the biggest lesson I've learned in life, is that no matter what system you're in, I've been in 7, 8 different organizations. None of them were different. The only person you can control is yourself. So stop worrying about the world that's changing. Stop worrying about the system that's not going to change. Think about how do you stand in that system and work with the system without losing who you are. Because at the end of the day, all of us have greater control on how we show up and how we engage only when we look inward.
I agree with that, Rochelle. And here I need to put one contrast and ask about your opinion. What is the price for us? For example, if I want to become now, let's become a grounded leader who will focus on empathy, emotional part, and also delivery, of course, is an inevitable part in every company. But the company says, sorry, we need someone who is more delivery oriented and more predictable.
You will still deliver. The difference is how you deliver. My philosophy is saying you can still be successful, but what you can do is have that success and have your family and have your friends and build greater belonging and be connected with others and be more human at work. And you don't have to get flustered when you get restructured. What happens? Everybody gets, you get restructured, you get told you don't have a job. Fear. How do you manage that fear? Because let's be honest, fear is never going to go away.
Do organizations actually make space for that kind of delivery, or will they? Let's say, as of this point of time, we know what is happening currently, but do you think that something could potentially change in this super fast moving environment, or do we as humans still in this world need to fight for it?
Yes, the companies need to do something. I don't think companies are resistant. It's individuals in the companies who don't speak up. It's individuals in the company who have unhelpful behavior towards each other. It's things that individuals do that impact the organization. If I look at my entire career, I was more vocal earlier in my career. The higher I climbed, the quieter I became. Why did I become quiet? Because the risks were higher. The cost was higher. So at the top, when you speak up, sometimes the consequences you're not liked. Sometimes you become the victim of the next restructure. So generally at the top of the house, I found that leaders challenged less. So if there is something to change, it's those leaders at the top of the house have got to start looking inward and looking at why do they stop speaking up. That's the work I've done.
But do you think that most of us people in general are quietly aware of it actually? That they went quiet for a reason, but they just simply don't want to fight the system and they just give up.
The sad part is people probably know intuitively inside. They know that they keep quiet, because I know as an HR person, when I'm standing at the coffee machine having a conversation, they're very vocal. We don't like this, we don't like that. But then you get in the meeting, and what happens in the meeting? The meeting's like almost like another universe. Nobody speaks up. But at the coffee machine, they do speak up. So I think intuitively people know that they're not speaking up. The question becomes, what do they do about it? How do they build that confidence? That's what they need to do.
I need to jump in here, were you aware of it? Why you became quieter?
I remember one moment where we had this leadership meeting where we had a discussion. All the coffee conversations were different to what happened in the meeting. And I remember driving home that day going, my God, is this it? We now meant to be at the top. We're meant to be leading, but we're actually not even having real conversations. I started to think about why. And that's what led me to, actually, I had burnout. So I was pushed to the edge. But in my time, when I took 11 months out, I started to think about why. And that's what started my entire journey of, well, what do we need to do about it? So I then wrote my first book, the end of last 24. We are published in the beginning of 25. And that book looked at the journey I went through. And then everybody started asking me, so how did you actually make this massive change? So you talk about your journey, and we can see it's very reflective. We see ourselves in it. We can, we understand, and it's good. But what did you actually do? How did you rebuild? That's what Anchored is about. Anchored is about, how do you go from a place of understanding that it's a problem to what do you do about the problem? So therefore, Anchored is literally, I've written 2 books and a journal in 12 months. So my new book it was written this year, but will only be published early next year. It's exactly about that. It's about what do you physically do to make that switch. But awareness is the first step, Peter. You have to be aware that you're keeping.
Before we move to today's date and what you have done, I still have to ask one more question from your past. Was there something that you really celebrated, for example, and you deeply inside of yourself, you knew that achievement, let's call it achievement, is costing people on the inside, but still you've seen it as a success?
Well, sadly, as an HR person, I did a lot of restructures. Believe it or not, no HR person likes to restructure. No HR person likes to make people redundant. And I would say that I hold my hand on my heart. Every restructure I've ever done, I've always done with care and respect for the people who were impacted. I even believed that what we were doing in the organization was the right thing. So I would say, as an HR professional, I'm incredibly proud of everything I've achieved. The issue that I'm not proud of is it came at a personal cost. It came at a personal cost to me. It came at the cost of burning out. And the point at which I burnt out was I was just completed a restructure during COVID. Okay, I think that was probably the worst restructure I've ever had to do. Hundreds of people were impacted. We were having to inform people on webcasts. That I didn't feel good about that. And so that took such an emotional toll because everybody needed to speak to me. So I was available for everybody, but nobody thought about, well, who helps the HR person? Because my day job had to be done at night because my time in the day was spent trying to support people. So for me, that was an example of success, but success for the business, not success for me.
I can feel you. I probably cannot understand because I was not in your shoes back in those situations, but it really sounds and feels heavy because that just the moment you said it, it takes a lot of honesty to say something that people don't really talk about that what you just mentioned.
Who wants to make people redundant? I mean, they have families, they're the breadwinners. It's the worst moment in an HR person's career. It's not nice.
Appreciate this honest answer from your end, Rochelle. Really, thank you very much for that. It shows a lot about you as well as a person, because being in a human resources and working with all talents across the globe, I believe this is one. Sounds easy, but definitely one of hardest jobs that can be. And I believe that only people who are in the industry can really understand that point. You mentioned that you started your second book named Anchored. I think it's a great moment now to ask you, it would be great to tell us as a sum up what is coming from you.
Well, if I summarize the book, it's as the title says, it's anchored. How to stay grounded when the world speeds up. It's as simple as that. The point is, you don't need to change the environment you're living in. What you do need to change is how you show up in that environment. And so my book is all about how do you look inside of yourself without telling the world you're doing your internal work. Because one of the things I know, and I know that from firsthand, you don't want anybody to know you need to do work on yourself. So the reason for writing the book the way I've written it is so that somebody can pick up the book without telling anybody and literally go through the steps that I went through and start to look at themselves and answer questions for themselves. It's not like any other leadership development program, because one of the things I realized in corporate, I've been on the best leadership development programs. They teach you frameworks, they tell you do these 10 steps, they give you a lot of theory, but none of them taught me how to look at myself. So this book is all about how do you look at yourself? How do you show up in a world that is chaotic? And how do you live with fear? Because whether you like it or not, fear is every day. I live with fear every day. Before the end of the month, I kind of go, ooh, am I going to be able to pay my bills this month? I still have that fear. It's never going to go away. But you can deal with it in a better way.
Sounds like a very powerful book. And I can't wait for February to come out. Honestly, I believe that I will definitely be one of the first to get it from the platforms where you will publish it. We'll be staying tuned, right, to see. And what is powerful actually when I say is that you wrote about changing how you show up instead of running from those environments where they're in, as you say, crazy companies, crazy corporates, and crazy environments, which is actually true. Crazy, fast, and unbearable sometimes. So
Exactly.
this is going to be a very great thing to read. And hopefully we will make some follow-up in some months probably to discuss
Absolutely.
about this.
Well, always happy to talk about it.
Yes.
I mean, I did spend a couple of months writing it. It didn't take me long, but
Was there anything that, let's say, you were writing a book and then talking about your life, and then you reached the point or the chapter of the book where you spoke about something about yourself or your previous experience, and then suddenly you got surprised by that?
I think it wasn't about content. It was more about style. So the first version of the book I wrote before I sent it, because I had 13 early reviewers read it.
Okay.
The aha moment was, for me, that grew up in I would say, tougher environment, growing up as South African, where English, we're very short, sharp focused, because we bilingual, English and Afrikaans. So the biggest aha in the book was I would use words that are quite, I would say, harsh to somebody who's grown up in an environment where everything is calm and peaceful and we use lovely words to tell each other off. So the biggest aha in the book was what was a normal word for me was not a normal word for the reader. So the only feedback, massive feedback I got was how do we change the tone of the book so that it meets people where they are. Actually, today's post talks about that feedback on LinkedIn, where it's the tone of my book needed to alter to meet people where they are, as opposed to scare them, because everything what I wrote about was true, but it was frightening.
It's interesting that even the language that you that you wrote can become a mirror of how direct the work really is. So this is very fascinating, and I think it's going to make that book even more authentic when it comes. Did you have at some point? Okay, you had reviews, right? And you were moving through reviews of earlier versions of a book. Was there a moment where you hesitated to keep it that honest, or did it feel necessary when you were writing?
I didn't hesitate. It was more like I was living, I was reminded of my self-beliefs. So writing the book made me go through what I am writing about in the book. So I literally everything I write about in the book, the steps I write in the book, I experienced as I was writing the book. So fear came up. I had to not be defensive. I had to hear the feedback. I had to go, okay, no, this is nothing to be, they're not critiquing you, they're critiquing the content. So all my old fears, my old self-beliefs surfaced as I was writing the book.
I have something that is a small logical game that I would like to ask you and to hear your opinion on that. So you are in a leadership role this time. So let's imagine yourself in that way. You're respected, you are trusted, you are doing well on paper, but you can feel that staying longer will slowly cost you something. Your energy, your voice, or your steadiness. You have three options here. First option, to decide to stay and learn how to protect yourself better from inside the system. Stay, but start slowly changing how you show up, even if it disappoints other people. And option C, step away, not because you failed, but because staying would slowly follow you out. Which option would you choose?
My intuition is A.
What brings you to that?
I would stay because I know, looking back at my 25, actually my 30-year career, it doesn't matter what organization you're in. Even if you're in an organization, even if you're working for yourself, even if you work for a small company, the world doesn't change because that organization is impacted by the same world we live in. You know, politically, economically, all of that affects you. So none of that can change. So therefore, trying and change that is not going to be the way forward. What it can happen is change yourself. Because if you change yourself, how you show up will impact not just your own well-being and your own self, but the people around you, your department, your family, the organization, all of that will feel the impact of you being different.
Okay, it's very interesting. I value your opinion. Maybe, I mean, if I could express myself, I would say when I was making this, I thought like maybe I would be in the option B, but maybe that's a difference in years of experience between me and you, I suppose. But I would go with option B, like to try slowly changing how I show up, even if it disappoints others. But I don't know. I mean, the decision is just not about staying or leaving the workplace. I usually change how I show up first, like how much I bend, how much I absorb, and how much I silence. Actually, that's the starting point I'm thinking when I choose the option.
Okay.
But I think
but just Peter, I think you may have an assumption. A doesn't mean I'm not myself. A doesn't mean I'm not going to disappoint somebody. When I chose A, I'm choosing A to be myself. Okay, so it doesn't. So there's almost no difference between your three. The biggest difference is the output. You know. So why do I say protect? I say protect because that's what people need in today's society.
Thanks a lot. This was again subjective. There is no proper correct answer that we can say.
Exactly.
This is something that is very individual and people will just choose whatever they feel, and it again depends where you are, from which background you're coming, and then where you live as well, and the business and corporate culture of companies where you are located.
Yeah. If anything, I have a lot of respect for people who stay in the organization and are able to cope, because it's no easy job staying in a corporate world. It's not fun.
Exactly. I think living with the first shake is just giving up for me. For example, for me it's like that. For example, toxic environment is something that might be the main trigger for me to leave the company in case it happens, and I see that it affects me in a manner that shouldn't be. Maybe affects the rest parts of my personal life as well.
Okay. Well, you know what, Peter, when you read my book, let's talk about toxic culture again, because actually, even you can stay in a toxic culture. If you focus on yourself, you know how to deal with toxic people. Toxic people don't bother you anymore. Let's be honest. We say in this world, I read a lot of posts that talk about a toxic culture, toxic boss, bad manager. They are just human beings like you and me. The reason why they're behaving that way is because they haven't dealt with their skeletons in their closet. My book is about how do you deal with the skeletons in your closet and how do you show up as a better human being. So if everybody reads my book, there wouldn't be a toxic culture.
So let's wait for that book, and then we are going definitely to discuss about this. I would
Good.
love to run other topics, maybe on a bright, successful side of leadership, which is also strongly valuable.
Awesome. It's been great chatting to you.
Thanks again for that. To close this one, there are a lot of honest words, but maybe let's talk directly to this person who is looking at watching this podcast at the moment, who is capable, under pressure, and trying to stay whole in the systems that don't always make space for that.
I would say first thing, you are an amazing, beautiful person. You are not a failure. And anything that you call a failure is not as a result of you, it's as a result of the world in which you live in. So trust yourself, believe in yourself. You have everything inside of you. It's about how do you unleash your power from within. Because at the end of the day, each person is a courageous, beautiful soul. And we all just want to do our best in the world, but you have to believe in yourself. So my advice is just believe. You have everything you need.
Wonderful, Rochelle. Thank you. And it was really a pleasure having you today together with your honesty in this conversation, which I mentioned already is usually softened or just rushed. With you, we didn't have that feeling. So this was very raw, very natural, very personal. And I really appreciate the way that you speak about leadership also from a different perspective and from your personal opinion without pretending it's. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Have a good day.
I can just say, wow, this was such a conversation with Rochelle. It's refreshing to hear, honestly, that someone talks about capability and wholeness in the same sentence without even pretending it's easy. This was very raw and natural approach and view to the real leadership nowadays, and at what cost it all comes. I can just thank Rochelle one more time that for showing that staying grounded isn't about escaping systems, but about changing how we show up inside them. So if this episode gave you something to reflect on, please make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. Links, the link tree is in bio of all our social media accounts, wherever you are watching us from at the moment. So new episode is coming very soon. Thanks a lot and be in touch.